here today to talk about two of my most favorite things, diversity and inclusion and open source. And I promise you I'm not just saying that because that's literally my job. So I am the Senior Director for Diversity and Inclusion Strategy at Github. So let me tell you, when I was interviewing, I was meeting and talking to Erica Brescia, and she was explaining to me how Github aligns its diversity and inclusion strategy across everything that they do. Its platform, its people, policy efforts, and philanthropy. So then Erica asked me that all-important question. So Demetris, tell me why you want to join Github. Now, everybody knows this question is coming, but I had just heard how Github had this amazing platform of then 50 million developers, now over 65 million developers. And in that moment, I said, Erica, I want to join Github because I want to open source diversity and inclusion. And I have to humbly say that it was a great answer because I'm here. So what does open sourcing diversity and inclusion mean? To find that out, we started talking to so many people across the entire open source ecosystem. Many of you who are in this room today and online. And as we had these conversations, there were several themes that started to emerge. First, inclusion happens at the community level. You see, when someone first comes into open source, those first one or two interactions that they have within those communities, it really sets the tone for whether they feel welcome, they say, these are my people, and they're here to stay. Or if they have these negative interactions, they come in, take a look, and they say, no, this is not for me, and they're gone, oftentimes for good. The second thing was that the maintainer or the community leader, they really drive the inclusive culture within a community. And what these maintainers were telling us was, they said, listen, we have all the resources we need. We have checklists, podcasts, articles, training, conferences, events. Everyone is telling us how to drive a more inclusive culture. But there's something that we're missing. We have a competing priority. We don't have the time. You see, when you're first starting a community, your number one thing is getting as many contributors to your community as possible, no matter where they are or who they are. As the maintainers told me, it's all about getting hands on the keyboard. So you see, there was this natural tension there. So then I said, if resources aren't the issue, what really is going on? And that's when the conversation started to differentiate a bit. When you spoke to the maintainers of the smaller communities, they said we have the resources, but we just don't have the time or the bandwidth to focus on it. But then when you talk to the maintainers of the larger communities, they say, yes, we have the time, we have the resources, we have the bandwidth, but there's this definite tipping point when your community becomes too large for you to really influence the culture. So you see, there was this thing going on, right? Where the time that you needed to be focused on the culture was a time when you didn't have when you didn't have the time to actually do it. So one of the things that was consistent, though, no matter who we talked to, they said we can create the most inclusive communities ever, but there are significant barriers to access. You can have these amazing, welcoming, everybody's having a good time communities, but if that gate is so high that people cannot get to it, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds or historically excluded backgrounds, then what are we doing here? Are we really solving for anything? And so with that, we are here to introduce All In. All In is a community that's dedicated to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in open source by focusing on access, community, equity, and data. And so today I'm going to share with you all what we've been up to in this community and extend an invitation for every single one of you to join us. So here's what we've been up to. We've launched the Open Source DEI Survey in partnership with the Linux Foundation. We have launched a Maintainers Listening Tour, and we are in the middle of a 12-month pilot. So you just heard Hillary introduce the Open Source DEI Survey. We are launching and finalizing the final report in December, but here's what it's telling us early on, some of the preliminary findings. 82% of our survey respondents said, "I feel welcome in open source." That's good news, right? I'm telling you, there are companies that will be thrilled if they could have an 82% score on their belonging question in their engagement surveys. So a lot of people would say, hey, 82%, we're doing well, this is great, let's just move on. Let's focus on something else. But that's not the purpose of diversity and inclusion. We want to give voice to the 18% who do not feel welcome in open source. What are their stories? What are they experiencing? What are the behaviors that they're encountering? Because that's where the conversation starts. Because what they are experiencing likely may be the things that's keeping so many others who want to participate in open source from even attempting. So what are the 25% of persons with disability? The 26% of women, 29% of persons of color here in North America, or the staggering 39% of third gender and non-binary contributors, what are they experiencing? That's what we need to solve for in order to create that vibrant diversity in open source that reflects the communities in which we live and we serve. So as we started looking at those intersections, those conversations, those stories, the thousands of comments, the qualitative interviews that we conducted, here were some of the themes. The first, technical skills and knowledge. They were saying if they come into a community and they do not have the technical and skills and knowledge to participate, that they were made to feel inferior. Lack of response and rejections to contributions. 80% said that this was happening occasionally. 40% said that this was happening frequently. If you have people that are contributing to your community, to your projects, and you do not have the time to respond, they are feeling invisible. It's not that they think you're busy or that you're rude. They literally are saying, I am invisible in open source. The next thing that we're hearing is that they feel that their voices aren't being heard or their contributions aren't valued. One direct quote was, if I am not white, if I am not male, if I am not highly educated, if I am not wealthy, they do not want to hear from me in open source. And we know that is not true. Another major thing was around written and spoken language. So many microaggressions, stereotypes, cultural barriers. 46% of those that said they do not feel welcome in open source said that they have experienced language that has made them uncomfortable. So we are celebrating 82%, but we have work to do. We have to get to the point where in open source, inclusion is not the exception. It is the norm. Where we make sure that community hospitality is something that everybody gets to experience. Like the open source community. you receive an immediate welcome from them through GitHub Actions. I have to put a plug in there, where it says, welcome to our community. We are glad you're here. Your voice is appreciated. Your contributions are welcome. Here are explicit ways in which you can contribute depending on your level of experience. So you are able to make meaningful contributions from day one. They tell you the turnaround time to get a response, and they honor that. That needs to be the norm across all communities. We have to get to the point where there are tools in the hands of every maintainer, like one that my friend Sean Goggins from the Chaos Project introduced me to. This tool runs a real-time report at any given time across the community, and it flags language that may not be inclusive. And so this maintainer is able to do a deep dive into what is happening with the dialogue, which is one of the #1 ways that people leave communities. And we have to make sure that that maintainer is trained with the de-escalation and intervention techniques that they need to make sure they're handling miscommunication in an inclusive way, not an exclusive way. We're talking about accessibility audits, consistent inclusive language scans, enforced code of conduct. These things have to become the norm, not the exception. So what are we doing to make sure that we are supporting these maintainers who are critically important? Well, we're listening to them. We are on a maintainers listening tour, which is a series of focus groups, individual interviews, and there's a link for you to provide feedback online if you aren't able to attend a focus group or an interview. Shameless plug, we will be having a focus group later today. Please check in your agenda and join us. We want to hear from you. The next thing that we're doing in All In is we have a 12-month pilot focused on maintainers and another one focused on students. The one for maintainers we are developing with the feedback that we're getting from that maintainers listening tour. But the students, we have kicked off earlier this month, and I can tell you all, these students are freaking amazing. Here's what they are doing over the next 12 months. Actually, they're already a quarter in. From August through December, these students are taking open source education and online curriculum that was generously provided by the Linux Foundation. They are also receiving professional development or career development training, because we all know that you can have the technical skills, but there are some things that you need to know that many of us wish we had known back then when we first started, that they need to understand in order to set them up for success in their career in open source. Then, starting in January, these students are going to participate in a 12-week project with our corporate partners, and the Major League Hacking Program is actually administering this for us. They will get real live experience in open source with a corporate partner for 12 weeks. The students are so excited about that. The purpose of this program is to set these students so that they have a clear pathway to success for an internship position during 2022 with one of these corporate partners. We were very intentional about the schools that we recruited from. We wanted to go to those schools who are often overlooked in the recruiting process for most major companies. These are minority-serving institutions, historically black colleges and universities, and we also have one university which was founded for the education of Native and Indigenous students. We also were very specific about the students that we wanted to participate. The stories of the students in this program are those that commute 2 hours to school each and every day because they can't afford to live on campus. or they are full-time caregivers, especially during this pandemic. Several of them are working full-time in addition to their full-time course loads. They are active duty military. They are also military veterans, reserves. These students are also playing sports because that's how they're on scholarship to attend schools. We have football players. We have a star swimmer. These are students in which life happens, in which sometimes their GPA might not be the indicator of their aptitude for success. They are hardworking, they are dedicated, they are passionate, and they have the will and the drive to want to come and join us in open source. And so we are going to support these students. And I am delighted that we are supporting these students through an institution of a collection of partners who said that they are all in, that they are going to be with these students from beginning to the end to give them what they need to succeed in open source, to give them that opportunity, to give them that shot. And so I wanted to put this slide up to say, this is what open sourcing diversity and inclusion looks like. We have companies who are not competing for the same talent, but saying that these students being in open source working for any of us is better for all of us. And I asked the design team at Github, and they said that there are plenty of opportunities and more space for many more logos. And I hope that the next time I'm before you, there's a whole slide full of names as well. So the one thing that I want you all to take away today, All In is not a program or a set of programs. It's a community. And a community is made up of all of you, of all of us. So to join us, go to www.allinopensource.org, join the community, attend the listening tour later today, become a corporate partner, contribute where it counts, no matter who you are. We have work to do. We have the mission, we have the charge. Let's open source diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Amazing. Hang on one second. First of all, this is such a great program. All of you watching online, all of you here, if your company is not a corporate participant or sponsor, come on in. For all of you who work in open source projects, we did surveys on what the motivations are for people. It's creating great code, getting that code adopted, mastering one's craft. It was all these intrinsic motivators. And I want to add one more here, and I think this program will result in it. The gratification of knowing that you've changed someone's life is amazing. Yeah. We did a jobs survey where 90% of the companies responded they're having a hard time hiring open source talent. The opportunity career-wise is huge. With just a little bit of effort, people who participate in these programs, their lives will be permanently changed for the better. So I really encourage you all to participate in this. And Demetris, I want to thank you for just really tireless work on this. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for being all in, Jim.
Thank you. All right. There we
Have
go.
a good one.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to take a break. We have a keynote starting again today with Linus Torvalds and Dirk Hondel doing a fireside chat at 2:20 p.m. There is going to be a break for now. Breakout sessions begin at 11, and I'll see you all back here this afternoon. Thank you.
Sending alone conversations with a stranger. I bet